Around here on the second chain, we're starting to see our water started coming back toward the end of the week, which is a great thing. We've been so low on tides and negative tides for a while. It's nice to finally have some water back into our estuaries, and it really starts to open things up. Now, what it does in the short term, it kind of scatters fish until you can kind of figure out what their pattern is again. When it was so low for a long time, those fish would concentrate. You could locate them, and once you found them, you could stay on them for a while. But now that the water has come back, that will be a short-term process that we have to figure out. These fish being scattered out. But the thing that we're noticing here, fish are starting slowly but surely starting to show back up on shell. It's not tons of them, but we're finding some around it. The great thing about the second chain here is you got mud still scattered in there. And with those tides that were being as low as they were, it made it wading pretty easy, and you could find that structure real easy and work around that off those a little bit deeper edges and work all that. And, Air's dugout, this is another one that's real good. It starts lighting up better toward the end of May. June, we just tried it out just to see, because up here, Air's Island, there's a nice little gut that runs right through there that's real deep. So there was fish that's been hanging in that. So we just kind of checked it out to see if there were some fish that have been hanging out on the reefs, and there are. Like I say, not great numbers, but now that water has come back, we're going to start focusing a little bit more on shorelines, closer to the shoreline. Now that we can do that a little easier, back lakes will start to light up, all that type of area here. Then you can get up in here in Belding, get on the back lakes and all that around the riprap on the outside of this. Belding Reef, again, we have mud that surrounds that, and you have deeper drops and edges that cover a lot of that stuff. So it's all the same type of structure in deeper water. But as this upcoming week approaches, we've got beautiful weather that's going to be coming in here, and water temps are, mid 70s. Going to creep up into the upper 70s. We're back to wet wading now. Thank goodness. That's always a great relief when you can get out of the waders consistently. Unless there's something in the foreseeable future that's going to drop our temps back down, should be able to wet wade the rest of the way till we get back into November. But anyway, we've located trout, and again, the trout numbers, the population is very healthy. It's very good. We're catching really good numbers of trout that are in that the new slot, the 15 to 20s, and we're catching lots of them that are 16 to 19 inch, then a handful that'll get up over the 20s, and in that upper slot there, 21 to 25, we're catching at least one or two on just about every trip with that. So that's really good signs for us. And of course, our redfish have been very healthy as well. The conservation that's been put in place is working, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So it doesn't do anything but benefit all the fishermen that are out there, whether you're doing it professionally or weekend warrior or just occasionally being on the water. You're going to catch some quality fish, and that's a great thing. So, the redfish have been good. Occasional black drum here or there, but I'm catching those just once in a blue moon type of thing. And typically what I catch those on is going to be a Little John or maybe an XL. But the main thing that we have really caught fish on this past week, the coastal brew baits, the dark bait, I think it's called Nuke Juice. It's a more green, got some gold mixed in there with it. And then, of course, the vanilla. I think it's vanilla bean. I'm not real sure about their color names. I just know standard, industry-wide, they're all pretty much, they got the same colors. They just put a different name to them. But those, the 5-inch have been very good. The Pav lures and the same thing have been very good for us. Throwing some mirror lure, Little Johns, and the XL. In the down south, we threw more of the original size in the Copperfield. The Bone Diamond has been pretty good in that. White Ice has been good in that. Watermelon Red. And then your typical Twisted Tea, Big Papa as well. Those have pretty much been the standard colors that's been working for us across the board with no matter what bait that you threw. Been sprinkling a little bit of top water back in as this water has come back, so you can get up on those shorelines and you can really work those shorelines now with that top water bait now that you have enough water. Typically I like to work knee to thigh deep with it, and it can really light up. Now the water temps are starting to warm back up. These fish are going to get even more active. Lots of finger mullet that are in our estuaries. Man, there's just so much bait that's pushed back in here. So all good things that have pushed back on us, and this upcoming spring should be pretty spectacular. Super flats, all this grassy area, all the way down here, all the way to Blind Pass. This whole shoreline, it's been pretty good this past week. I spent a couple of days on it, different days, but just a couple of days here and there, just to prospect it to see if we've got fish that are pretty well staying in this type of structure that we're staying on. So, we're still mud, grass, clump shell, but with the temperature starting to come back, water temps being what they are, they're going to really start to show up on shell. So on this particular shoreline, there's some scattered shell in areas, but you got a little bit more hard-packed sand, grass. Common denominator, no matter what time of year it is, always going to be grass. And working all that area back here, you've got deeper edges and drops and stuff. So earlier in the week, we didn't have as much water, so we kind of stayed away from shorelines, and we stayed a little further out and fished a little deeper guts and edges, and just kind of worked all those areas, noticing just tons and tons and tons of finger mullet everywhere. And then toward the end of the week, we started noticing that water level starting to come back. So all good things. But again, what I mentioned just a minute ago, it was, it scatters your fish. So you have to you got to take a few days, kind of figure out, regroup, and figure out their pattern, what they're doing now. So as soon as that happens, at least for me, I'm going to go back to areas that I know that I've got big grass flats, got potholes, I've got deeper water access close to it. When I like to see it at a certain level, that's when I start kind of looking at the back legs, see if those fish have pushed back into there, see if there's bait that's pushing back into that. And, back here on the super flat, Blind Pass, and then, of course, on the backside of Mud, you've got a lot of that different kind of structure that you can work. Like I say, the different days that we spend here, trout was pretty good on one day, and then we scattered redfish on the latter part of the week, and that's what's part of the fish kind of pushing out now. So once that happens, again, you have to kind of figure them out and recalibrate everything, and then go from there. But again, same baits that we've been using down south. Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Watermelon Red, White Ice, Bone Diamond. Those are just the standard flavors that we've been throwing pretty much all winter. And it's going to be good moving into the springtime and into summer. That's not going to deviate just a whole lot. Now, it just kind of depends on what your water clarity is. You may have to throw something that's a little bit more bright, maybe something with chartreuse, or something to that effect that will help that bait stand out in that dirtier water. But right now, we haven't had just super hard winds or anything that's really dirtied anything up. So it's been very nice. And working the backside of Mud up here in the big grass flat muddy area back in here. Latter part of the week was really good for us. Early part of the week was a little bit more difficult to fish where there's not as much water. But again, this is your target area, so those fish are not going to move off too terribly far. Once they get comfortable with that water level coming back, they'll move back up on that flat. Again, the Pav lures in multiple different flavors, the coastal brew baits in multiple different flavors, but primarily the 5-inch flavors with the ones that we've been throwing. With this new moon that's in there, we're on the backside of the new moon now, and we haven't got into the transition days, but it's not going to be long before we are there. Probably 3 or 4 more days, and we'll be in those transition days. But so just adjust accordingly. Majors and minors has been our main things that we have really fished and found our fish in and around those time frames, and in between those bite frames, the bite's been more of a kind of we've had to scratch fish out. So just kind of keep that in mind. This upcoming week looks like it's going to be a spectacular week as far as weather goes. So hopefully you get a chance to get out there and enjoy it. Here on Newcomb Point, in Copano Bay, been trying to see slowly if these fish are transitioning to more hard-packed and shell and grass, transition out of the wintertime. Granted, we didn't have a super, super cold winter. There was a few days here and there, maybe a week or so here or there that were pretty chilly, but for the most part, our winter was not super bad, which is great. Our springtime so far, has been nice, warmed up gradually, and it's been very consistent. Loving it. So we decided to come fish Newcomb here. So that's just it's another one of those prospecting things to see if there's fish that are starting to move up on these hard packed areas. And if you fish Newcomb, man, you can fish Newcomb from the corner down here and fish through the piers that are out there, and then get up here a little further and wade it all the way out to the point. Great bottom, hard packed. You got a lot of different undulations in the floor. You got shallow spots. You got guts in there. You've got holes that are in there. You got drop offs. The day that we fished this, it was still a pretty low tide. On that, wasn't quite negative, but it was still pretty low. So we were probably about 100 yards off the shoreline fishing that, out there in about thigh deep water, and found a few trout that were hanging out there. Tremendous amount of bait that's moving up and down the shoreline. Noticed that the porpoise were hanging out just a little bit further than we were. So that's the areas that we were kind of targeting and looking, and just working up and down the shore here. That was the main thing. The particular day that we fished is, winds were pretty low. Wasn't a whole lot of movement on that particular day, so the bite was really tough. But the few fish that we did catch, they were quality fish. They were in that 16 to 19 range, which, again, I mentioned it earlier that there's lots of these fish that are in the estuary, man. The conservation side of things have really picked up, and it has done a really good job. As you will see, as you spend more time out on the water, you're going to find you're not catching, like it seemed like since the freeze that we've catched a lot of dinks in those 13 to 15s. Now that size has moved up, and there's a lot of the 15s to 19s that are in the water. And that changes every year. It's, those fish grow. They'll grow 2 to 3 inches every year. So if you catch a upper slot trout that's in that 19 and a half, chunk her back. Let her get a chance to get into that big slot up there at 21 to 22 range. Then see if you want to keep some fish, keep the 16s and 17s. But anyhow, we worked all this point here, worked up there, just spend a little time out there and just kind of prospecting, working the water. Nothing, like I say, nothing that was spectacular on that day. Just more informational thing than it was anything. So as we continue to move into our springtime and our warm patterns can continue to progress for us, then those fish are really going to start pushing up. And they're probably going to get ready to start laying some eggs too. So that water temp gets above 70 on a pretty consistent basis for a while. You'll start finding some really fat fish, and you could have an opportunity that you are super nice fish here in the next couple of months, because they are plenty to be had up and down the coastlines. Port O'Connor area all the way down to Baffin, or even lower below that, and everywhere in between, you're going to have an opportunity at some point in time if you have enough time to spend out on the water. We're seeing the numbers that are really starting to produce bigger fish on a consistent basis. But anyhow, same baits, same estuary that we've been throwing. White ice bone diamond, big papa, twisted tea, watermelon red, in the variety of the baits, whether it would be coastal brood, mirror lure to down south, and knock and tail. The knock and tail's been, the greenback's been the best for it. So there's lots of finger mullet. That knock and tail greenback really mimics those finger mullet. So if you haven't used those, or you do have some and you don't have that particular flavor, you might want to pick you up some, because that flavor right now is like really good. And another thing too is we'll start to see lots of shrimp starting to migrate. So if you get the Marker 54 jerk shrimp, that's a really great bait to throw. You can put underneath the popping cork, or you just kind of free line it and work it through the potholes, and you'll have a pretty good amount of success. Topwater bait's going to be pretty spectacular as well. Kind of went away from it, and then we kind of backed off of it. Now we're getting back into a little bit warmer water, and we're going to start tying those back on again and start to see if we can't get some of those spectacular blow-ups. So anyhow, work your majors and minors. And, we're fixing to be in the transition day, so adjust your bait profiles accordingly, or how diverse your box is. And then enjoy your upcoming week and have a lot of fun when you get out there.